Maria Corina Machado is ripping off the international community by overpricing Venezuelan petroleum recovery to the exorbitant figure of $1.7 trillion. As it has been extensively discussed in this channel during the last few sessions, upgrading the entire petroleum and electrical grid and pipelines and roads for most of South America, with an emphasis with Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, and Guyana, as well as Venezuela as the energetic hub of the Americas, it would still be below $800 billion. Why is Maria Corina Machado overpricing double for only one country when you can do the job for several countries at less than half of the figure she proposes? And in order to achieve that, she is thanking Donald Trump for a ridiculous regime change bribery that has been dismissed by the presidents of Mexico, Honduras, Colombia, Cuba, and a number of political movements in South America and Africa. It is unfortunate that nobody presents a detailed breakdown of how that $1.7 trillion will be used. Building brand new upgraders for all Orinoco fields, Suata, Machete, Cerro Negro, and Hamaca, so that they can each process 2.5 million barrels, would only cost $8 billion each. So theoretically, just with a $32 billion investment, you can make Venezuela refine from heavy crude to synthetic crude 10 million barrels of oil per day, which is more than what Saudi Arabia produces. That would, of course, be an ultimate target, considering that recovering Zulia, Anzoátegui, and Monaga's conventional oil fields will actually be a lot cheaper and faster. And of course, you will need steam injection, polymers, and various enhanced oil recovery methods that have been extensively discussed elsewhere, which are common knowledge of the petroleum industry right now. And something similar is happening in Argentina with Vaca Muerta, where they know they can produce at profit with only $45 per barrel. Recovering Guri electrical facility would be only $1 billion. Recovering other hydroelectrical power facilities would be perhaps $5 extra billion. My road project for all of South America, which is more than 50,000 kilometers, is only $170 billion. Upgraders for all of Latin America, including Brazil and Guyana, Peru, Ecuador, Mexico, that will probably be $200 additional billion. And that's it. I mean, what more overpricing do you want? You won't get to $1 trillion unless you start inventing unneeded costs. Where is the breakdown for $1.7 trillion? You can't just punch figures to the international community and expect that they will sign you checks for $1.7 trillion. And I am not expecting that to be made either for $800 billion for the entire continent, even though that's a lot more reasonable and a lot more conservative. But still, I must prove that my accounting is sound and that I am not incurring in extra cost, because I don't want to rip investors off. And obviously, you can't either place small amounts, because then the project would be incomplete because of underinvestment, and many times underinvestments get lost. You cannot just produce figures and play with them and just add a multiplier and say, well, I will increase unexpected cost to 30% rather than 15%, or I will add another multiplier for this. No, you can't just do that for huge projects. Of course you use multipliers, but you still have to go case by case and check in 40, 50, or 60 cases that the multiplier is actually working. Venezuelan opposition has provided a Venezuela land of grace plan during the years, and nobody knows what is in there. But I am worried that perhaps they know it's all the improvements we need are less than $1 trillion, and they are adding an extra $1 trillion just for commissions and corruption. And we want to get out of corruption. We want to present to the international community sound energy and mining projects within South America that are environmentally responsible, that take care of local cultures, indigenous cultures, mestizo cultures, that provide training and education so that we have no oil spills or not environmental degradation in mining areas. And all of those cost a tiny fraction of the cost of a brand new upgrader. Figures are usually counted in millions of dollars, not billions, and much less trillions. Guri Dam, which is one of the biggest in the world, only needs $1 billion for refurbishment. Itaipu in Brazil and Paraguay and Argentina, they have several of them. They also need perhaps another $1 billion investment, maybe a little bit less. Renewable energy projects can also be added. Thermal energy projects can also be added in all countries. Maybe you add them up and it will be $300 billion and not $200 billion, because I probably missed out many cases. But still, the numbers don't add up to $1 trillion yet. And it probably wouldn't be sound to take absolutely the whole continent with every single facility to be upgraded, because that's not needed either. What we are looking for is a sound starting project that will benefit all of South America and Central America and the Caribbean simultaneously. By the way, my calculations also include Cuba refineries and Cienfuegos, and developing offshore exploitation of Varadero fields north of Cuban coast, because for Venezuela it is very important that Cuba starts producing and refining their own oil so that Venezuela doesn't have to subsidize it forever. And in the geopolitical aspect, Maria Corina Machado is dismissing Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and Suriname because she only wants Venezuela to be the only oil hub. That's not regionally sound. Venezuela, Suriname, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago should be bundled together, including their oil and electric industries. They share the same Guyana shield in the continent. All they need are more roads and pipelines and refineries between them in order to produce economies of scale. I hope presidential candidates in Guyana are listening to this channel before the elections and they comment. Because at this point, it really doesn't matter who will be the ultimate owner of Essequibo. I don't really care about the national sovereignty of Barima Guairini, Cuyuni Masaruni, Potaro Supenam, Upper Takutu, Upper Essequibo. They deserve to be spoken as like you speak of Del Tamacuro or Bolivar or Anzoátegui or Monagas. They are regions. Regions are important. Regions are more important than countries because regions are the ones that provide the economic development that is taken by countries through taxing for their corruption. So I am sympathetic to the regions and I don't care about the countries. I no longer care about Venezuela or Guyana. I'm sick of their constant infighting for a territory they never provide any services. They only ask residents of Cuyuni Masaruni or of Sifontes municipality for voting while they still have dirt roads, or they have to mine gold in miserable conditions because neither the Guyana or the Venezuelan government does absolutely anything for them. Hopefully all of these regions will be taken care of by Chevron or ExxonMobil. It is a widely known fact that Chevron in Zulia state, near Boscan and other parts of Zulia, particularly the eastern Lake Maracaibo shore, they have many educational and health programs. Does ExxonMobil take care of the indigenous populations within Guyana, within the Essequibo, within East Demerara? When I speak to other Venezuelans about my preference for ExxonMobil to return into the country, I always receive the answer that ExxonMobil is the worst of the Seven Sisters and it's predatory. Well, let's see. Perhaps as they realize that opportunities are in this continent, and as they realize that Guyana, with a new presidency, or with this presidency, if it gets re-elected but with more experience, will probably toughen conditions on them. And they know they are producing profitably at $40 a barrel. Stabroek is profitable at $40 a barrel. Vaca Muerta is profitable at $45 a barrel. Machete, Suata, Hamaca, and Cerro Negro are profitable at $50 a barrel. And that is including all the greenfield investments that must be made, that of course are a lot less than $1.7 trillion. Hyperboles and superlatives are a gamble. The United States is gambling when they ask 50, they ask people to capture Maduro, increasing the bounty from $25 million to $50 million. So 25 million was not enough, but 50 million will be? Eric Prince once said that he was actually expecting $100 million. So perhaps what will happen is that we will still be in this impasse for a few months, and then early next year, the United States will increase the bounty for Nicolas Maduro for $100 million, and then we'll see. But politically, this is not making any sense because the rest of the world is laughing at the idea. Especially because everybody knows Maduro is in Miraflores. And he was in La Guaira yesterday. He is visible all over Venezuela every day. He is not in clandestinity. The crucial fact, though, is that Maria Corina Machado is asking the United States to increase the bounty for capturing Maduro and probably cause a civil war, with the conditioning that $1.7 trillion must be invested in projects that do not need that amount. Or perhaps, maybe what I will have to do is that my current project, which is already $800 billion, maybe I would have to go across Mexico and Brazil extensively, which I haven't done. I have covered some parts of Brazil. I have covered Northeast Brazil, I have covered Northwest Brazil, and I have covered a small portion of South Brazil and Southwest Brazil. But easternmost Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro to Bahia, I have not covered yet. Maybe I will have to do that. And maybe I will have to extend in Mexico beyond Tabasco and Campeche, and then see what can be done in Veracruz or those north areas that are covered by... But no, because that would be going to a lot of scope. I don't want to increase my project more than I am comfortable with the price tag it has. Why do I have to increase the price tag of my project so that it does have credibility? Besides, if you are a supporter of free market, projects that involve government should not be that gigantic, in the hope that along with the government you get a reasonable price tag and you let the free market invest automatically, laissez-faire, laissez-passer. And also we must be careful on allocations that we would have to make between different South American countries, so that Venezuela represents the rest of South America in OPEC. I envision Venezuela's future in OPEC as extensively discussing with the rest of the countries what could be the oil production expectations of all of the South American countries, concentrating initially in Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago, and Brazil, then Argentina, then Peru and Ecuador, and last Colombia, because it seems that Gustavo Petro is not friendly to oil production, which is a shame because there could be great economies of scale if we could cluster Caño Limón and Guafita, which are both important Barinas Llanos oil fields, a few kilometers apart, just separated by the Arauca River. Maybe to exceed the project beyond $1 trillion, what could be done is a huge investment in the mining areas to the most up-to-date technological refinements so that mines are pristine. There are probably experimental ways of mining that are extremely expensive and that do not disrupt the environment. In that case, for those who want gigantic project numbers that exceed $1 trillion so that it looks beautiful on paper, but then will politicians and markets commit to these gigantic investments that will not provide a return? We should concentrate on investments that we know will provide return, like Santos, Potiguar, Vaca Muerta, Orinoco Belt, Monagas, Anzoátegui, Zulia, Caño Limón, Kifra. A lot of money has to also be devoted in cleanup for Ucayali and Loreto in Peru, and so many estaciones in northern Chile where copper mining was abandoned. Lake Maracaibo must be cleaned up. Lake Valencia must be cleaned up. Arco Minero needs to be cleaned up. We must really check what has been the environmental considerations in Vaca Muerta. We haven't heard much about environmental issues in Guyana, but probably there are many. Indigenous groups are very vocal in that, and I invite indigenous groups to join the discussion. Because if we want to honor Maria Corina's call for a $1.7 trillion investment in South America, at least let's allocate that $1.7 trillion in projects that are needed, but we need to identify those projects. And there also should be a discussion on what projects must be dismissed. For example, Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. Is lithium going to be produced there, or will the market shift completely to Argentina and Chile? Isn't there a way that Bolivia can also present a project included in the 1.7 trillion proposed by Maria Corina, because that amount suffices for all countries? Well-planned budgets are not that hugely expensive. There are so many ways to cut costs and to realize where there are inefficiencies. Let's help Bolivia develop Salar de Uyuni in an environmentally friendly way acceptable to their indigenous populations. Eventually they will realize it's not in their best interest to just leave the market open for only Chile and Argentina. For me, a great priority with the roads is because they would provide connectivity through pipelines and through fiber optic communications, so that we don't have to depend so much on satellite communications for remote areas. If you connect through trunk roads all of the continent, the need for satellite communications will decrease, and you will be able, through fiber optic, to have high-speed internet everywhere. The road between Manaus and Porto Velho, communicating the states of Rondonia and Amazonas, is cluttered with Brazilian telecommunications company repeaters every 100 kilometers. And that road needs a huge upgrade. If we develop a pipeline system that can transport petroleum from San Jorge to Vaca Muerta, to Chaco, to Santos, Potiguar, Suriname, Stabroek, and the existing Venezuelan network, we will transcend a northern South America hub and we will have a full continental development, which will probably be the most important oil producing region in the planet, in close competition with the Arabian Peninsula. Does the United States want that? Maybe the United States would prefer to deal with only one country, but then what Maria Corina Machado is asking is not doable, because basically she is asking the United States to abandon Guyana, to embrace Venezuela. That doesn't make any sense. Venezuela and Guyana must be embraced first, so that United States embraces both. I really do not wish to meddle in Guyana's election. I saw a post by current President Irfan Ali, and he is campaigning for PPP. I know there are Asruddin Mohammed and other candidates that would like to improve things in Guyana. I think Irfan Ali has done a good job, but it could be better, and unfortunately his relationship with Venezuela has been hostile, especially Robert Perso. So we really should treat ourselves as friendly neighbors, and that's not being the case. Maybe if an opposition candidate wins, relations with Venezuela will improve. But if Irfan Ali is re-elected, I wish him well, because I still think he's a good president, but maybe someone else could be better. Or let's see. I really wish the Guyana elections are performed peacefully, and that Guyanese are conscious on their decisions, and they can transcend their tribal black versus Indie fight, which now combines Venezuelans, which is another ethnic group that is in Guyana. Let's hope they multiculturally vote for one Guyana in perfect oil and mining integration with neighbors Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, and Brazil. Because what Maria Corina Machado calls the hub, the energy hub of South America, is not only Venezuela. It's also Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and perhaps areas of northern Brazil.